ready to get started. We don't want to eat up any of our guest speakers' time. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nicole Ray. I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Communication and Community Relations here in the district. And I have the distinct pleasure and honor of working with Joel on a daily basis. And I just wanted to take a minute before he comes up and introduces our guest speaker, just to thank him from the bottom of my heart, because this program that he started has helped so many young people, and he's really committed to giving you all a realistic experience of what it's like to be a journalist, to be a real journalist. And you all are getting published, you're getting bylines, you're getting recognized, you're leaving school with a portfolio that a lot of full-time journalists may not even have. And so I just want to take a minute to just recognize Joel and thank him for his hard work and dedication, because he does all of this in his own time. He doesn't get paid any extra money for doing it. He does it because he is passionate about journalism. He's passionate about all of you students. So I just want to give Joel a round of applause and thank him for his hard work and dedication to the program.
Thank you. And I did forget to thank all my communication and community relations staff that are here today. So thank you guys for being here and supporting this as well throughout the year. Our guest speaker, I have a lengthy bio for her, so I'm not going to read the whole thing because that'll take up too much time. But I do love the part at the end, so I'm just going to read that part. So on February 1st, 2016, Mayor Sylvester Turner selected Juliet Stipeche to serve as Director of Education, a new position within the Mayor's administration. Juliet passionately believes that public education is a human right, is the great social equalizer, and is the foundation for a prosperous community. I think you and our superintendent would get along, because I think he says the exact same thing. She is excited to collaborate with educational institutions and community partners to build lasting relationships, to promote educational opportunity and excellence in the city of Houston. And just a reminder, if you do have a question, say your name and the school that you're with before you ask it. So without further ado, Ms. Juliet Stipeche.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, it's such a privilege and an honor to be able to spend some time with you this afternoon. Congratulations on all of your awards. I'm sure you've worked so hard this year, and it's just wonderful to finally have a little bit of time to decompress and to celebrate. I think it's amazing how quickly time flies by. I can still remember when I was in high school and had the opportunity to participate in various different types of activities, and what you're learning now and what you're doing in this organization is so transformative. I mean, the opportunity to already have published pieces in the paper, but I think the thing that I find most extraordinary and really exciting about your interest in journalism is your caring to know facts, to be able to understand and create a story, and to be able to think critically, to be able to evaluate the information that comes before you in a meaningful way, and also to serve as a guardian of democracy, and to just stress the tremendous importance of literacy. So I tell folks, this opportunity of working for Mayor Sylvester Turner has just been tremendous. I've been with him for about a year. Mayor was sworn in last January, and prior to serving on in this capacity, I served on the Houston Independent School District Board of Education for 5 years. And in 2014, I was the board president. And so I spent a lot of time talking to journalists, a lot of time talking to the paper. I spent time speaking to folks from NPR, KPFT, KUHF, the various news stations locally. And so, just standing up here before fielding your questions, I know that you have many different questions that you want to ask. So, just giving you an overview, it's like, what does the director of education do, right? So when I first started in this spot, there were some folks that said, why in the world does the mayor want a director of education, does he want to be the superintendent of all the different school districts? And of course, that was not the intention whatsoever. What he was trying to do and encapsulate was when he was campaigning, and all his years serving in the Texas State Legislature, in which he was state representative for 25 years, he noticed that in many different community meetings, people were consistently asking questions about what's happening with our public schools. What's happening with the way kids are learning today, what's happening with the way, we allow young people to be promoted, what's happening with the teachers and the curriculum, what's happening with the funding. And so he wanted to have this position so that way there would be a person at the city that serves as a spoke to a wheel, someone that can serve with the assisting of the collaboration, communication, and coordination amongst the educational institutions that exist in the city of Houston. So when I served on the school board, I thought HISD was huge. I mean, there's 215,000 young people, right? Largest school district in the city of Houston, largest school district in the state of Texas, 7th largest in the country. And then, since I've been at the city, I was like, wait a second, there are 16 other school districts in the city of Houston as well, a total of 17. If you were to include all the students that are in the pipeline of the different districts, there are about 903,000 young people. And so the cumulative budget, I have not had an opportunity to calculate, but if you look at just the budget for HISD alone, that's $1.8 billion annually. And so cumulatively, if you put all 17 together, you're talking about billions and billions of dollars. I sound like Carl Sagan talking about the cosmos, right? But so just in coordinating, there are 17 different school districts, there are 42 charters, and then on top of that, there are all the institutions of higher learning. University of Houston Downtown, University of Houston, St. Thomas, Rice University, you name it, Houston Community College, San Jac, Lone Star, the laundry list goes on and on. And so we had the first meeting of all 17 superintendents, I think ever. And it was interesting. I told folks, I was like, I've never seen superintendents so quiet in a meeting, but it was because it was the first time that the city government and the educational government entities were coming together to talk. And then we also had a follow-up meeting with all the presidents and chancellors of the institutions of higher learning. I haven't even started talking about their cumulative budget in terms of National Science Foundation dollars, different types of funding, state funding, federal funding, international funding that goes into the institutions of higher learning as well. And then there's a laundry list of all these different programs that exist. And yet, it's not easily accessible to the general community. For instance, how many of us know about all of the different programs that are offered at the institutions of higher learning here in the city of Houston? There might be robotics, there may be a journalism program, there might be a theater program, there might be a music program, there might be programs for professional development for instructors. And yet today, we still don't have a centralized repository to easily share and distribute that information to the public. It's funny. So I tell folks, it's like, even though we're extraordinarily connected today, more so than probably any other time in human history, with the usage of cell phones and computers and the internet and Google, we still have issues understanding what exists, even in our own backyard. So that's my job. My job is just to get everybody to sit down at the table, break bread, and figure out how we can work better together. On my drive here, I was talking to the Texas Workforce Commission of how can we work with the Texas Workforce Commission to try to get more jobs available for young people over the summer or during the school year. Imagine if you're in journalism and you're studying journalism and you have an opportunity to know about different opportunities that may exist at the Houston Chronicle or at any other institution, so that way you can have an experience where you can earn and learn over the summer during the school year. Wouldn't that be great? So since I've been at the city, I've worked on Mayor's Hire Houston Youth Program, and we were able to expand the number of jobs available for 450 at the city to this year we're offering about 5,000 opportunities across the city of Houston. So I tell folks, since I've started, I've had I don't know how many different meetings. I've had meetings with nonprofits that are interested in different types of specific programs to institutions and organizations that provide resources for out of school, after school, or health, or food, nutrition, well-being, mental health services, all those things. Education touches so many different areas. You as a student but also what happens in the community with these buildings, the folks that are employed to make sure that the schools are running and operating, the school buses are well maintained and able to get you from point A to point B, but also the people that are designing the pedagogy and the curriculum and trying to ensure that you get the quality, well-rounded education to prepare you for the future as well. I tell folks, it's like, my background, I'm a lawyer. And how did a lawyer get into this, right? So I'm a lawyer that ended up running for the school board, spent 5 years, and now I spent full-time working on educational initiatives and issues. And it's a wonderful, extraordinary opportunity and a significant challenge. But I think that it's just been fantastic. And I also get an opportunity to spend time with you. And so I don't want to bore you to death by continuing to talk about the journalists. So please, I'd love to answer any questions that you may have. Just wanted to pitch out an idea of what I do. Yes,
Billy Sherman from Cywoods. How are you promoting education in some of the poorer parts of the city, like around Third Ward or areas around downtown?
So the mayor has, if you had an opportunity to look at some recent news reports, in mid-April, he announced the Complete Communities Initiative. And Complete Communities is centering on 5 neighborhoods that have been traditionally under-resourced and underserved in the city of Houston. Gulfton, 3rd Ward, 2nd Ward, Acres Home, and I'm drawing a blank on the other one right now. Near Northside. So you're looking at these areas, and Complete Communities isn't just about infrastructure. It's not just about sidewalks. It's about what are the essential infrastructure and supported institutions that are needed to help communities flourish. And so he's identified financial institutions, parks, libraries, but also quality schools. And so what does that mean? I tell folks quality schools contains a lot of different parts to it. And so I'm a part of that Complete Communities Initiative. And what we're saying is, going back to that discussion of the clearinghouse, how can we get a centralized clearinghouse of low cost and no cost resources that exist in the community to assist young people and families succeed? How in the world are we going to also coordinate with school districts to see if there's some way that we can leverage resources that we have in the city in a much more effective way to conduct outreach to young people that might be disengaged from the system? So this is just one example and something that just passed this week or last week. So I had an opportunity to meet with HISD. And HISD talked about how in Los Angeles they utilize the multi-service centers to help with dropout recovery. Young people that for one reason or another were disconnected from the school system, how in the world were we able to get them back on track so that way they can take courses to at least complete their diploma? And so we said, well, we've got all these multi-service centers located all over town, and they're underutilized in terms of opportunities for people to come in and have different types of programmatic activities taking place. They're still open. We have to pay for the electricity and the air conditioning and the staffing and the security. And then on the other hand, you have HISD, which have these Twilight Academies that are located within their campuses. So Twilight Academies are available for a young person that drops out of school, but they're between the ages of whenever they leave school to up to 24 years of age, and they can come to the school and they can take these courses so that way at least they'll get their diploma, right? But how many folks that leave school want to go into a school building with a bunch of kids during a regular school day, right? So we said, well, how about if we open up the multi-service centers for the Twilight Academies so that way people can come into the multi-service centers, take the courses that they need, have resources and connections to health and other support services that we have in the community, and allow them to graduate in a much more accessible, welcoming fashion. So that ball started rolling down the hill and was just passed last week. And so this morning I had an opportunity to talk to Lauren Eisensee, who is with the local NPR station, and we were talking just about that. So that gives you an example of just utilizing a creative way of leveraging resources in a collaborative fashion to design something that is more intuitive and responsive to the situation that young people are experiencing today.
Jordan Miller, Cypress-Fairbanks High School. You talked about that meeting that you had with all the different superintendents from the Houston area. Specifically, have you been working with
do is be able to leverage, my first job is trying to get this clearinghouse. Because we've been working also with the Houston Endowment, the United Way, and the Harris County Department of Education. The nice thing about the Harris County Department of Education is it's an entity that kind of serves as a resource for 25 different school districts, right? So in the city of Houston, there's 17. In HCDE, there's 25. So we're going to go ahead and work with HCDE because they already have the memorandums of understanding and the collaboration with all these other school districts. And so part of the initiative that we're working on with the Harris County Department of Education is the United Way, Houston Endowment, and HCDE to come together and create this clearinghouse so that way those resources will be promoted through the city, utilizing a digital platform, mapping out where these resources exist, and it'll be free and available to everyone to use. So it's like, when we first started, I was like, I don't want it to be like, oh, we're only working with HIC, oh, we're only working. We really want this to be something where it's truly collaborative, to be able to meet. That's what I said. I was like, my goodness, how short-sighted was I? And only looking at, granted, I was an HISD trustee, so that's good. I should be focused on HISD. But I think that's the thing. It's like, Houston is so large. You can fit the entire state of Rhode Island inside the footprint of the city of Houston. It's 654 square miles plus, and with the ETJs, which I'm not entirely sure what the ETJ stands for, but it's like these districts that get some resources and benefits from the cities, but aren't necessarily included in council member districts. That increases it from like 654 and 670 some odd square feet. But anyway, to make a long story short, we're huge. And we've got to be much more effective at collaborating and leveraging the resources so that way we'll be able to be responsive to all communities. Those that have been traditionally under-resourced and those that might be newer communities that have been disconnected because of distance. Thank God for technology, right? And so when I was driving over here talking to the Texas Workforce Commission, I was like, look, we've got a database in the city. We have a database at Workforce Solutions. Y'all are creating another database, and yet they're all speaking different languages. So young people, if any of you are computer scientists or know of anyone, please refer them to us, because I know that young people could probably solve this problem much more effectively than some of the traditional folks that might be looking at the system at present. So your insight and input is extraordinarily important. So. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Brandon Costello from Texas, and I've heard you talk about some of the difficulties you have with the technology as far as communication goes. But how has communication made your job much easier?
Communication's made my job much easier because this is, one example. So there's an organization called the National League of Cities, and I wasn't familiar with that organization until I started working with the mayor. And it's basically a resource of, any city that purchases into this collaborative gets all this research information about different initiatives and activities that are happening, and they have one, which is Educational Programmatic Action Network that exists. And so utilizing technology to be able to collaborate and Skype and discuss with all of these other cities that are a part of this initiative has been extraordinarily insightful. We have been examining what they're doing in other large cities as best practices and trying to determine what we can learn from those best practices, not necessarily to just cannibalize it and bring it exactly. We want to be able to learn from those best practices and design something that's very specific to Houston. And but technology's been outstanding in allowing us to have this discussion. And for instance, one of the collaboratives that we're working on, Higher Houston Youth, was selected as one of, well, initially the cohort was 12, and then it was whittled down to 6 different cities, but we're one of 6 cities that's a part of the National League of Cities in terms of outstanding, or I should say, initiatives that they're keeping an eye on that are developing to try to connect young people to job opportunities that exist. And one of the persons that is assisting us in that collaborative and funding the collaborative is LinkedIn. And so that just gives you another example of an opportunity to connect to a national organization that's connecting us to a technology organization that's going to try to provide us with information about the platform that they're developing. And one thing that I was talking to LinkedIn about, how many young people use LinkedIn? Right? I know. So see, that's the problem right here. So it's like LinkedIn is trying to learn of ways to be attracting a younger audience, right? Because you look at LinkedIn, I was like, look, I'm 43 years old, and I don't like LinkedIn, right? That's like, but it's a professional organization. organization is great, it's collaborative, you learn about different companies and things along those, but I'm more friendly on Facebook, right? I like Facebook a whole lot better. So, in part of the discussion with LinkedIn has been a discussion of how can it be more enticing or more responsive to the needs of young people. Because like right now, where do you go to look for a job? You Google something, you may get a word from a friend. Somebody was like, I want every single person that comes to work for me to knock on the door. I was like, well, good luck. Good luck with that, you know? It's like, there has to be a much more effective way of utilizing technology, right? And so with the Mayor's Hire Houston Youth Initiative, we've collaborated with CitySpan, which designed the digital platform in Chicago. And so they also have a badging technology that we want to incorporate into the system as well. But that gives you an example of utilizing blended learning and digital learning opportunities in a way that will allow young people to continue studies that may or may not be offered in their classroom. Yes?
Very cool. Another question. So we're talking about using LinkedIn. Have you ever thought of reaching out to other social media platforms in order for this?
Yes, we have. And so LinkedIn, so there's like a lot, there's so many different programs. I tell folks, it's like, I thought that I would be finished with my meetings by now. And so when I was coming in, I had an opportunity to speak to Mr. Joel about another digital learning opportunity called the News Literacy Project. The News Literacy Project is a digital platform that assists young people in being able to learn how to critically decipher and interpret information that they receive online and through other sources. The person that founded News Literacy is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist. His name is Alan Miller. And he started this organization to try to encourage young people to participate in journalism, but also beyond that, to allow all young people to be able to develop critical thinking skills to be able to decipher fact from fiction. And so he said that he had no idea that when he started this about 10 years ago, that the term fake news would become something so prevalent in today's society, right? And he, in fact, really dislikes the usage of the term fake news, right? And so, but, Alan said that when the presidential election was taking place, their website just went through the roof with all these people trying to learn about the News Literacy Project. And also some of the folks like Facebook and Twitter and Google became very concerned post-election because of the way their platforms were utilized in various ways during the election cycle. And so they went to talk to Alan Miller about how could they assist in funding the News Literacy Project. And so that's just another example of how these large companies are interacting in the world, and then there's a concern about what's happening in the way people are interpreting and digesting and consuming information, and what's happening to be able to empower young people in the community to utilize technology in a way so that way, they're understanding their place in the world, being able to appropriately interpret the information that's being presented to you, but then how are you sharing your story as well? So that's an example of another, large conglomerate of different organizations that are coming in to assist with a school learning type platform opportunity, which I would strongly encourage y'all to take a look at as well. It's free. The portal is free for now. So they have a portal called Checkology, and they're very interested in student input to try to make improvements to the platform as well. That's another example of technology. Yes, sir.
When students graduate out of high school, be it the twilight schools or just a traditional path, do you try to keep them like in Houston, like U of H or local, public schools?
I think that students should apply to, what do they say? Apply to one school that is your dream school. Apply to a school that you know that you're going to be able to get into, and then apply to something in between, right? And so it's like, I think that we have to make sure that every young person has an opportunity to go to the university of their choice. And one would hope that it's local, but that university of their choice that allows them to be empowered with whatever area major is outside of the city of Houston, then my goodness, you should go, right? But I would strongly encourage young people to please come back to Houston once you get that advanced, wonderful, fantastic degree, because we definitely would love to have you contributing as a member of the city of Houston.
And then, even after college, are you doing anything to promote job growth for kids who are just coming out of higher education?
It's funny, it's like I tell folks, it's like when I worked on the school board, we spent very little time talking about what you just described. Which seems odd, right? We should be talking about where are you going to be once you finish your post-secondary studies, right? Or what can we do to connect you should you decide that you have no interest in going to college or something along those lines. So, unfortunately, as a former school board member, a lot of what we did was we kept our lens quite focused, and we were strictly looking at your scores and are you going to be graduating, right? And so it caused a disconnect. And so this disconnect is something that I readily see when I'm working at the city. And the disconnect is you've got all these companies in the city of Houston, every type. And there's some that are like, we can't fill the jobs that exist in our company. And then you also have another initiative. How many of you know about the Greater Houston Partnership? Okay, so there's the Greater Houston Partnership. And the Greater Houston Partnership has an initiative called Upskills Houston. And so Upskills has identified the 7 high critical needs areas for employment in the city of Houston that require mid-level skills. And so there needs to be more opportunities for the companies and the partnerships to collaborate with the various school districts and the universities so that way the young people will know about the different job opportunities that exist in the city. And so, I did not realize that there were so many retail positions that yield very high salaries with time. There's a professor called Tracy Davis at the University of Houston downtown who specializes in this retail area. He used to be the president of the Houston Retailers Association. And he said, my goodness, so many of these jobs go unfilled. And they have to bring in folks from other parts of the United States or other parts of the world to fill them. I had no idea that serving in logistics in a retail setting, you can get paid over $200,000 a year. And he said there's just such a tremendous amount of opportunities in all those different fields. So. Oh, I'm sorry, there was somebody you had your hand raised.
What do you feel like the biggest issue public schools are going to face or have faced, and what's your plan of action?
Whew! So when I worked for a period of time at Rice University. I worked at the Tapia Center with a professor by the name of Richard Tapia, who was a computational applied mathematician. And there was another professor there that had a wonderful opportunity to get there from the Jones Business School. And he specialized in looking at transforming bureaucratic institutions. Like he did a significant amount of studying of the post office and how the post office competing with UPS and other sources of businesses have changed over time, and how a model that used to work great in like the 1800s had to change, and and he was talking about, okay, how is that related to the school system today, right? So what you have is you've got a school system that in many ways there are some areas of a school system that is designed based on like a 19th century manufacturing, agrarian type system. They talk about even the bells and whistles of changing classrooms and things along those lines are based on a factory model, right? And so then you have schools that are talking about utilizing technology and blended learning and project-based learning and things along those lines, which is the more innovative, modern way of trying to educate young people so that way they'll be prepared for the jobs that exist in today's economy, right? Standardization, homogenization, a lack of creativity, and finding one answer for a problem is not necessarily what you want in today's economy, right? You need people that are going to be extraordinarily creative, that are going to think outside of the box. You're going to want to have young people that ask questions, like all of you in here. And you're going to want to have people that are literate and know how to write and express themselves effectively. That's why this program is so important and so outstanding, because it gives you all of that, right? You're doing PowerPoint presentations, you're talking about what you've learned, you're asking people questions, you're going out in the community, you're communicating. And it goes back to that thing. It's like, as much of the digital technology that we have today, if it's not effectively placed in the context of how you relate to the rest of the world, and it keeps you just in a bubble where you're just by yourself and you're not relating with the community, that doesn't allow you to be everything that you're meant to be, right? But if you're able to utilize that technology in ways of connecting with a greater world, but sharing your message with others, that's the major. That's the magic. That's what will get you into that Ivy League or that Tier 1 or that, that place, the measures beyond, right? Because people aren't effectively doing that. So I tell folks, it's like today's world, we have to create a system in which creativity is viewed as a great asset. And so that requires us, we know that sometimes it takes a while for things to change with time. It's like with the way we measure students, for instance. Right now, students are pretty much measured on, do you come to school and how are you doing on those tests, right? And wouldn't it be nice if you could be assessed also on what award did you win in journalism? What are you doing in terms of helping your community? How are you helping yourself? What's your social emotional well-being and how are you doing? Those are different factors that I think with time they're moving and trending towards trying to be more inclusive of things along those lines. But it takes leaders to go out there and push for those different opportunities, that out of school, after school, and enrichment, and an opportunity to travel abroad. Those should be critical, essential, important parts of your learning experience. And so the wonderful professors and teachers that you have here assisting you with this program, they're connecting you to the larger world in that way. And always remember, this is what I tell folks, like, there's two things that I learned in school that helped me tremendously, but you already have the first one. One, don't be afraid to ask questions. Always ask questions. And the second thing is, please, don't forget to get a mentor, right? And so the third thing is, like, how many of you like asking for help? All right, good. Okay, so I want all of you to raise your hands, right? I want all of you. Why do you not like asking for help? Makes you feel dumb. Makes you feel like you don't want to. You can do it on your own. You're independent. We're all trained to be independent. We're good Texans, right? Texans, we pull ourselves up by our bootstraps. We don't need anybody's help. We go our own course, right? Ask for help. Believe me, it makes life a whole lot easier. I mean, it's like, and I'll tell you, as a former politician too, if you run for office, what do you have to do? You have to get the votes, right? And how do you get votes? You have to get people to leave their house to go out and vote for you. And how do you do that? You have to share your message. How do you share your message? You gotta raise some dollars. You gotta go out there and pound the pavement. You gotta knock on doors. All those different factors, bottom line, the underlying foundation of that is asking for help. The same thing is, if you want to be a great journalist, how many people, most of the jobs and the connections that people have are through the networks and the friends that they have. And so it's just, that's just my takeaway lesson. Ask questions, get a mentor, because a mentor can make things a whole lot easier. It's just like finding a road map or using Google Maps to get from point A to point B. That's what a mentor helps you to do. Not an advisor that tells you what classes to take, although a mentor can do that for you. A mentor is a person you can go to. You can ask any question you want to. You never feel bad about asking that question. And the other thing is, just dream big and do exactly what you take risks. Not foolish risks that hurt yourself, but take risks, in terms of saying, if I want to apply to this Tier 1 university and see what happens, apply. What does it matter? It's like, they think they said the first generation college students, they go off to college, they say sometimes you're like, oh, I made an F on that exam, I'm terrible, I gotta quit. This place doesn't belong, I'm trying to make myself out to be somebody I'm not. And I said, for other folks that have been in the system for years, they're kind of, hey, I had a bad day. All I need to do is go get a tutor. Big deal, move on, grow, learn. Get that help that you need so you can succeed. And so, your future's so bright. You've got so many wonderful things ahead of you. So, I'm really proud of you. Yes,
Kate Shotell from Jersey Village. Now, one of the things you said was it was very important to get mentorships. And you also mentioned previously that it was a big concern for the government to, or I guess especially for Houston, to get jobs for students after they graduate and such.
Mm-hmm.
However, what about generating interests in either lower education areas with using someone from a higher education, such as like a shadow program or maybe like a career kind of day that I never really see too often, and I really appreciate it a lot more in different areas as well.
Yeah, and that's what, as I tell folks, I was like, when I was in high school, they used to have more opportunities like that than they do today. When I went to a high school called High School for Law Enforcement and Criminal Justice, and it trained you, and I was like, isn't that a crazy name? High School for Law Enforcement. You have to go to school to be able to say the name. My sister went to the High School for Performing and Visual Arts, even longer, right? But, I tell folks, those schools, they would prep you into your area of subspecialty, right? So I did law legal, in your senior year, you were supposed to work at a law firm, like half a day you go to school, half a day, the other half day you work at a law firm. I decided not to take the position at the law firm because I wanted to take some extra classes to go to Rice. But I tell folks, it's like those opportunities, to be able to connect to a real world opportunity through job shadow, every single, it's like, my goodness, I'm sure it's like, there's some way, have y'all had an opportunity to go visit like the Houston Chronicle, or maybe we can do something like that, Or it would be cool if y'all could come to a press conference in the city of Houston too. And write a story about exactly what you see in terms of an issue that might be important. We can schedule something like that next year or at some point as well. We have press conferences happening all the time. Mayor just had one in relation to like the pension issue, or, my goodness, they happen all the time after city council. So it'd be great for y'all to talk about your input and questions about higher Houston youth and things along those lines as well. Yes.
During the last section of high school, as the city of Houston gets bigger and bigger, and like the school districts start expanding more out, how are you planning on adapting to that?
Well, I think it's, the city of Houston is growing so rapidly that, on the one hand, growth, compromises the system, but on the other hand, with the way the school finance system is designed today, you need more people to fill in your classrooms, or else you're going to be in trouble if you don't have enough of them, right? So what you have is actually like the shifting in terms of people moving from one area to the other, and how that compromises neighborhoods and schools. And so I think the thing is, it's like with Mayor's Complete Communities initiative, it's more along the lines of how can we develop stronger communities with the infrastructures to be able to support the schools, as opposed to, having to understand what's happening in the day-to-day of running the unique campuses, but seeing what can we do to be able to help in providing those additional measures of support, to be able to help during those timeframes when the population goes down or when it starts to go up. But recapture, man, that was something. Ooh, that was really crazy, and it's like too much for today, right? Yes, sir.
So you talked about how like the mentoring and stuff really helps you become successful and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you also said that you didn't take the law position. So how do you think your life would be different if you actually did?
So I would have had a connection probably at Vincent and Elkins. No, I interviewed at Vincent and Elkins and Baker Botts. I ended up getting a file clerk position at Baker Botts. If I had graduated from law school, I would have had a connection at Baker Botts, and I didn't when I graduated from law school. So I ended up going to work at a civil litigation firm. But that's just an example of, if you do have that relationship, you can, hey, I'm looking for a job, I'm finishing law school, can you send my resume to one of the partners? And some of my friends that ended up taking the job, they did just that. So even though it was a file clerk position, which was not luxurious, in a huge office, and I'd be sitting there with a typewriter just, putting labels on a file folder, I would have had an in. Because there's something that I didn't know. This is another thing that, it's like social mobility. What does that mean, right? What is social mobility? Social mobility is another word for is the American dream, right? To be able to say that you're going to do better than the economic background of your parents, and that each generation, you would hope, would be able to do as well and or surpass your parents, okay? And they said there are 5 factors that play a key role in social mobility. And it talks about less patterns of residential segregation, income inequality, family structure, access to quality public schools or quality schools. And the last one is a nebulous figure that I didn't know about and I didn't pay attention to until I served on the school board. And it's called access to networks and social capital. So what's social capital? Okay, so capital, money, right? Or some type of benefit. Social, people benefit. Sometimes people benefit is totally free. It's the person that you ask, how in the world do I apply for that scholarship? How in the world do I get that job? What do I do? So social capital and social networks is that mentor and that role model that will link you to that world of connections that they have. And so it's like when I tell folks, when I was at Rice, I met this professor named Professor Bob Stein. And Professor Bob Stein is a professor of political science, and he's also, you may see him sometimes on TV, he's the political commentator for KHOU Channel 11. And Bob Stein was my mentor and helped me when I was at Rice University and helped me get a job my senior year working for Councilmember Keevee at City Hall. And that job at City Hall when I was a senior in college allowed me to have an understanding of the operations of government, which I still utilize to this day, you know? And so that's why it's like, whatever you learn, I tell folks, you can never be too selfish when it comes to your own education. Never be too selfish. The good thing is, you can lose everything. Nobody wants that, right? Even if you lost all the clothes on your back, what do you still have? You have whatever's in your life, right? And then you'll be able to rebuild. But what's most important is how you invest in your learning. It's a valuable treasure. And the most wonderful thing is, when you know how to do something, you're going to share it with somebody else. And that increases the social network, both of yourself and your capacity to help others. And that delves into the meaning of community. One reason why many of the communities struggle is because they're segregated and socialized. And the young people only live within a 5-mile radius of their home. And so the smaller your world, the more difficult it is to know about the other opportunities. And so that's why we're utilizing technology, increasing opportunities, and enhancing connections, because everybody has the passions, dreams, and interests. It's just getting that social network and capital to be able to succeed. And once again, social capital, it can be free. It doesn't necessarily have to be paid, but it must be shared.
So, follow-up questions to that. So, you talked a lot about how literature really helps, but I mean, for me personally, I only know about that kind of stuff because of my days in journalism.
There's the social capital. There's
I mean, like for other people who don't have access to someone as great as Sarah as well, it's like, how are we supposed to help them become their own practice on this stuff?
So as a journalist or as a journalism student, this is something that you can write too. Many times the people that are making decisions don't know about what's happening to the young people in our community. And so I tell folks, when I started on the school board, I was like, oh my gosh, 76% of the kids that go to HISD are economically disadvantaged. And then I started working in the city. I was like, wait a second, 88% of the kids that are in Aldine are economically disadvantaged, 84% of the kids in Aldine. And so I started looking at all these different figures and all the different demographic changes and what's happening. And so I was sitting at a meeting. I was invited to come and present to a group of judges and lawyers. And I okay, Juliet, we had one superintendent come in, we had another superintendent come in, and now we want you to present as the perspective of a trustee, right? And so I came in and I presented, and they were like, is this information accurate? We want you to provide the reports to support the data that you're presenting, because I couldn't believe the scores and statistics were the way they were. And so I told them, I said, my goodness, there needs to be advocates for everyone in the community. So we can, one, it's like, Professor Tapia says, it's the moral and ethical thing to do, but also it's a matter of our community's survival and success, and what we measure as success for a community. And so, I tell folks, I was at this National League of Cities event, we were there for the intersection between education and health and building community school strategy. And so the question of what does it mean for a community to exist and to be successful? So you have an outstanding champion. You do, but it's like you learn from her, you learn the lesson of how you will also help others. And remember that even though you're in high school, you can still help a whole lot of people in many, many amazing ways. In fact, with the boldness of being young, you can do a whole lot more. I tell folks I had a young group of people, the HISD Student Congress at HISD, they wrote the first amicus brief in school finance litigation in U.S. history. I was just sitting down with them, and former Superintendent Billy Reagan told them, why don't y'all file an amicus brief? I sat down with them and showed them how to, just the bare bones of what's required, and they ended up filing it. It's listed in the footnote of the Texas Supreme Court case. Granted, the court didn't rule in the student's way, but they made it into national news, and they're also in a footnote in a very, very important case. Yes, sir.
Justin Martinez from South Spring. How often do you get to work on with students on like a face-to-face basis, or just get to talk to a student?
So when I was on the school board, I spent less time having an opportunity to talk to students. When I was at Rice University, I helped put together a program called the Tapia Math Science Scholars Program. It was 40 young people that lived at Rice University for 4 weeks on the campus. I had a lot of opportunity to spend with those 40 young people, right? And I tell folks, like, oh my goodness, now I know what the just a small sliver of what principals and teachers and support staff feel like, working with these 40 young people 24/7, right? And I wish I had more opportunities to spend time with young people. In Higher Houston Youth, I assist with talking to young people to recruit, but also to interview. I work with student interns at our office as well. But I really feel that I need to spend a lot more time because in order for us to be able to effectively design programs that are going to be meaningful and impactful, we have to get more input from them. Yes?
You ever consider having like people in high schools and colleges just come to you and say we get the young people's opinion more?
Yes.
You consider going like getting a few people selected by teachers to come and talk with you? That's
Well,
what topics.
right now we do have an organization called the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. And it's a group of young people from all over the city that can serve as, it's a mock up of the city council with the mayor and the city council members, and they talk about issues that are happening and things that are important to young people. But in the capacity of having, a larger like town hall meetings and things along those lines, I've got a young person that's going to be starting this summer that I'm going to be working with to see how we can develop things along those lines. It's a lot of work. God, it's just me and another person. So I've been working like crazy, especially with Higher Houston Youth being so involved right now. But I haven't worked this hard since I was a baby attorney. So I'm certainly doing something I'm very passionate about and love. But it is the man from Rice University that I was mentioning before, the economics professor, said that they have invested billions and billions of dollars in terms of education reform. And education has consistently been demonstrated as one of the most difficult, complicated areas to be able to implement reform. And I tell folks, I think it's because, and this is just my humble opinion, that there has been a disconnect from the concept of community. So I'm hopeful, very, very hopeful, that Mayor's Complete Communities Initiative will bring in an extra layer of reform that has not been addressed before. Because the schools cannot certainly be held responsible for doing everything on their own.
What are you doing to create opportunities like everyone in this room right now with your HSJ, and what are you doing to create opportunities for kids that in programs like, or in neighborhoods like the second and third ward, and so they have the same kind of opportunities that we have out here?
So what I've been doing since I've started in the city is working with the different directors. There's various departments in the city of Houston, from parks to libraries to the mayor's anti-gang office to the municipal courts to, so it's like working with all these different groups and bringing them together to, one, identify the programs that are available, but two, also asking for the different groups to start signing on to a way of evaluating and assessing programs in a more meaningful way, so we can up and have high expectations for all of the programs. But also I'm hoping that with the assessments we'll be able to get additional funding so that way we can further program to more young people. Because funders need metrics and evaluations to be able to continue to invest. And the city has been very good. That's just between us and saying. We're working.
Where would you get the additional funding from?
So you have to be creative and utilizing a methodology of rating different funding sources. So there are several large foundations that exist across the country. There's also state and federal and local dollars that could be more effectively leveraged in efficient and economical ways. Yes?
So as high school journalists, we are kind of limited on what we can say and what we can publish on high school side, but how do you think we can get our voice across so higher ups can see what our problems are?
Well, one thing, when I was on the school board, my one part that I'm very proud of was collaborating with the HISD Student Congress. And it's described as student council on steroids because it's not just specifically assigned to the campus, it's an overarching congress of kids from all over the school district that meet and collaborate and talk about different things. When they first started meeting, it was a lot of magnet and Vanguard schools, but then I was like, hey, look, if you really want to have an accurate picture and help everybody in the city, you start making sure you recruit from all of the campuses so that way you can start to understand what's happening in the other side of town, right? And so they created a Dear HISD website, and it was kind of like they would write reports about the magnet program or the quality of the food lunch and what was happening with alternative education that was kind of promoting alternative campuses and things along those lines. With time, they strongly influenced what was happening in the decision-making process. They kept tabs on how many people visited their website. The magnet request for reform was one of the most visited. So it's surprising. I mean, it's really amazing what you can do to be able to share information. You can write an op-ed piece to, of course, to be able to submit to the paper talking about things that are important to you and what you would like to change and how you would like to improve on them. Of course, in collaboration, with the folks that are your mentors and role models as well, so they can give you great input as your editor. But I think that you stand to have your voice is extraordinarily important, and right now it's way too quiet. And I really, really do think that y'all could have a very, very meaningful, engaged opportunity to make government more responsive. But I've always been a person that's a bit of a rebel-rouser when it comes to student advocacy, so.
So, I have a question. So, we were talking about the getting kids jobs after they get out of college and stuff like that. But I know there's a big scare of taking lower jobs because the wages may not be enough to support their families. So how are we supposed to combat that, getting people out of the workforce, not necessarily for financial services?
So the question is, do you stay in school to continue to get your degree, or do you get a job so you can help pay bills, or is the financial circumstances such that one must make a choice between working and going to school? So I always tell folks it's good to sacrifice and suffer and try to get through your school as quickly as possible. There's a lot of funding that's out there that goes untapped many times. There's so many young people that don't fill out their FAFSA and their CAPSA form. There's actually conferences in which they're trying to encourage more people to fill out their financial aid forms because it does have a greedy net benefit to the local economy as well in a very dramatic way. Whereas if you have, for every 1 percentage point of increase in young people filling out their FAFSA, the dollars that come into the community are tremendous. But for one reason or another, it's just very difficult to have young people fill out those forms. And so they've been trying to come up with much more creative ways, FAFSA fairs and getting the word out, and then it doesn't help that the timelines start to change, and it's all just, it seems so obscure, and that's why it's so wonderful to have counselors and people in positions to be able to help you navigate that system. But they say that if everyone actually filled out their FAFSA forms, there would be a lot more money available. And sometimes some of the schools that are viewed as the most expensive are the ones that have larger scholarship packages. So it's just getting a hold of the right people and organizations and the people that can help you navigate that system. Now, sometimes people may have to work and go to school at the same time. But I think the thing is, the value of having an education is so important by comparison to, work. And there are a few careers where you can go in and continue to get more and more money, but you got to do your research before you take that risk. All right, well, I see people coming up to the front, so that means I must be going out the door soon. But I just wanted to say thank you again. Your questions are outstanding, and this was a fantastic opportunity. I really appreciate it. And how many of y'all are seniors? Oh my goodness. So y'all are ready to take off to college? What are y'all going to be studying? Journalism. Everybody here's going to be doing journalism? Really? I see what you're saying. Kind of.
It's like a mix of art and journalism.
That's fantastic. What are some of the schools that y'all are going to?
A&M.
A&M. We got Eddie over here.
A&M Commerce.
A&M. Oh my goodness. Oh, yes, that's crazy.
Oklahoma.
Oklahoma. Oh my goodness.
University of Texas Austin.
Hey, I went to UT Lubbock.
Wait.
That's awesome. My sister and husband are Cougars. So, and Mayor's a Cougar too. Mayor's a very, very proud Cougar, and he touts U of H more than the Harvard Law. He was like, he went to Harvard Law School, but his love is always the University of Houston. Yeah. But anyway, congratulations. I'm so proud of all of you, and have a wonderful graduation. Enjoy college. Good Lord, it's a great fun time. It's a lot of hard work, but you're gonna enjoy it. So, thank you.
And as is customary with all of our guests, we would like to present you with a High School Journalism Network tumbler
Oh my goodness, look at
that you can take back to the mayor's office and take it out to all your events. So. Thank you for being here. And just in closing, thank you so much to all of our students and our advisors and all the parents that were here that showed up. I appreciate everyone's support throughout the year. You seniors, man, it's gonna make me cry seeing you all up on the stage this year, taking your pictures. So just proud of you guys for all the work you put in. So thank you so much. And it's been a great 2016, 2017. They're about to take away all the food, so make sure you grab something to go, especially if you're going to be in this board meeting, because it's going to be like a 3-hour meeting. But they will let you guys go after the awards. So anyway, thank you all very much. You're all dismissed.
Group picture.
Oh, yeah, let's get a group picture with Juliet up front.
I've seen it before. Good for you. That's a middle one.